Hey, I'm Chris, and over the next 6 weeks, I'm going to be selling off some of my comic books. Every week is going to have 9 lots of comic books, and, just to start things off right, the first lot is going to be a featured lot of a bunch of comics. So without further ado, 6 of the best Man of Steel stories ever written. First up, Superman, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. This is the story of the ending of the Silver Age Superman. Just a heads up, it gets a little dark. It includes a Superman Swamp Thing story, which, because I know Superman Swamp Thing doesn't get anyone excited. It's a very good story. It also has For the Man Who Has Everything, which was the basis for the Justice League Unlimited episode of the same name. The comic story is better not because it's the original, but because it's written by Alan Moore, who's best known perhaps for writing Watchmen, but should probably be known for writing V for Vendetta. Anyway, it's also got the Jason Todd as Robin, which is pretty rare. But anyway, let's see what's up next. Superman Gen 13 is written by Adam Hughes, who's really best known for his pinup art of a couple different things. But, you know, he's an artist, but he also writes a mean Superman story. It's one of the best Supermans I've ever seen. It has the Gen 13 90s teen superheroes who just don't play by the rules. Cross paths with Superman. And, you know, it's a story about the timeless nature of Superman. And, the pencils and inks for this thing, as you can see, are just fucking amazing. They're done by Lee Bermejo and John Nyberg, not Hughes, but as you can see, whew, just amazing, amazing shit. And again, great story. Next up, we get Superman, The Wedding and Beyond. Now, alright, it should probably be called Clark Kent, Lois Lane's husband, because in this fucking story, Lois is a fucking badass. It is, of course, the story of Superman trying to juggle being depowered, planning a wedding, and still having a ponytail in 1996. Regardless, it's got great character moments. It's got the entire Superman cast, plus a few guys that only existed in the 90s. And like all comics, it's a time capsule of a specific moment in history. Superman doesn't destroy Darkseid with singing, he doesn't punch out Lex Luthor, but it is a rollicking adventure that studies the very core of what Superman could be. And of course it's got gobs of fucking Lois Lane in it too. That is Misfit Leak. So, anyway, it's great. Now next up we got Superman, Last Son. It's written by Jeff Johns, who's best known for his run on Green Lantern, but who also writes one hell of a Booster Gold story, as I'll be having up later here. Richard Donner, who did the first 2 Superman movies, more or less. And Adam Kubert is doing the art for this, and you can see the art for this is just great. It's the story of a Kryptonian kid who falls out of the skies of Metropolis, and he's taken in by Clark and Lois Kent. Then General Zod, and Zod's in this, spoilers, whatever, Zod happens. It's got highs and lows, and it's just heartbreaking in some places. But it's a story about acceptance, love, and self-sacrifice. And I know that sounds really, really sappy, but it's not. It's a comic that manages to defy all the sappiness that might be implied by its themes, and manages to be exceptionally good. It's based on the hybrid of the Donner films and general comics continuity. It gives a nod to the rest of the DC universe without ever getting bogged down in the minutiae of that. There are bits of the mythology that are a treat if you're familiar with them, and if you're not familiar with them, they're well explained. And Lex Luthor is in this. It's Lex Luthor. I mean, he's in all of these except for, I think, the Gen 13 one. So that's a whole other reason to get in on it. That's what the Beatles. Anyway, and as you can see, the art just fits perfectly. So, let's see. This is All-Star Superman by Grant fucking Morrison. One of the top 3 or so writers writing comics right now. Oh, it's illustrated by Frank fucking Quietly. One of the best artists arting comics right now. Anyway, this is the same All-Star Superman they made the animated movie about not too long ago. It's the definitive Superman story. It's actually one of the also greatest Lex Luthor stories. I've got a better Lex Luthor story coming up later in a couple of weeks. But anyway, Grant Morrison does an amazing job of paying homage to classic Silver Age elements while giving them a positive modern look. Even if you're not familiar with the Silver Age, if you can accept that Superman's history is long and weird, and if you can integrate the parts you don't recognize as you read through it, you'll be in great shape. I mean, if you run across something called a Sun Eater, what do you think that does? Right, it eats suns. It's a bit nicked up, these copies that I've got, because I tend to loan it out, because it's a book that you want to loan out, because it's so good that you just want to share it. And it's just amazing. And anyway, for all the weirdness and grimness of Alan Moore's Silver Age wrap-up, this thing is affirmative and positive. It is like a 1-to-1 ratio. There's a reason that self-important comics nerds on the internet will not quit talking about this thing. And that is because, alright, the secret reason I'm going to share with you right now is because, if you promise not to tell anyone, it's because it is really, really good. That's the secret. It is really, really fucking good. There are some comics that every comics reader should read at least once in their lives. They contain essential stories and events, take place in specific points in comics history, or have an indisputable quality that elevates them above the standard fare. Conveniently, I'm selling some of these classic comics. Gun? Check. Katanas? Check. Guys named Slayback and Comcast? Double check. Hillary Clinton jokes? Check, actually. Yellow framed word bubbles? Check. Classic Deadpool is so 90s you could factor it into 4 primes less than 6. Starting with his very first appearance in New Mutants, this thing chronicles the first 2 miniseries and the first several issues of Deadpool's own ongoing. The comedy is just right. The action is pointed and clear. The pathos? Palpable. The melodrama is so click you will need a katana and an automatic weapon to get through it. It's a solid piece of work by the likes of Fabian Nicieza. Damn it. Nicieza. Yes, Fabian Nicieza. Anyway, Mark Waid and Joe Kelly. Whether you love later Deadpool runs by Gail Simone, Daniel Way, or even Fabian Nicieza, and you want to go back and get some background, whether you're an old school fan of Deadpool who wants to get the very, very, very early stuff, oh no, she doesn't go here, or even if you're a pretentious jackass such as myself who's tired of Deadpool, you're going to love this. It's different from the modern Deadpool in that it's a bit less cartoony and self-referential. But it's still essentially the same character. It's classic comedy, it's classic action, it's classic Deadpool, and it's classic comics. Now this front cover's banged up a little bit, has seen a little bit of action there, but it's still good. So there you are. Amongst the writers who've just so happened to have written some comic books, Warren Ellis is one of the best. Young men want to read his books. Young women want to read his books. He's made of whiskey and a beer that grows from itself, like a Keratin or Ouroboros. Alongside a bevy of unparalleled artists, he has made things like The Authority, Planetary, Next Wave, Transmetropolitan, and Freak Angels. Now I'm not selling any of that shit though. This week I'm selling Iron Man Extremis. It's, just to get the record straight, in 2013, 2 movies came out that were loose adaptations of works by Warren Ellis. Red 2, which was based on Red 1, which was based on the graphic novel Red, and I believe a movie that was called Genius Billionaire Playboy Philanthropist 3, sometimes erroneously referred to as Iron Man 3. Genius Billionaire Playboy Philanthropist 3 was loosely based on this Extremis story by Ellis. Here, I got it in hardcover, so, you know, whatever that's worth to you. In it, the comic that is, you've already seen Genius Billionaire Playboy, etc., etc. Tony Stark learns that a human enhancement formula has been stolen. He finds the thief and proceeds to get his iron butt fucking busted off by an unarmed redneck. What follows is a pretty good fight comic that manages to balance character work and clever turns while having great little ideas and editorial mandates squirreled into the niches. Ellis is better when he's completely off the mainstream leash, but even when he's on it, the result is unparalleled. The art by Adi Granov is perfectly soft and human, so as to better accentuate a story about mind, body, and technology. And, yeah, just look at this thing. It's fucking great. It's fucking great.
Do you feel that hole? That hole in your life? The one that's the only thing separating you from the crushing realization of your ultimate irrelevance in the face of a massive and different universe? Or maybe you just need to escape from your ordinary life for a little while. Well, don't try heroin or alcoholism. Take it from someone who sells comic books. The new addiction you need is a comic book.
Casanova Luxurious, written by Matt Fraction, who's done some allegedly solid work on X-Men. I don't say that because I don't believe in that. It's just I haven't. Casanova is the only thing of his that I've read, even though I can't get people to quit banging on about Fantastic Four, Hawkeye, Spider-Man, and a couple other things he's done. Because again, I haven't seen any of his work that isn't this, so I can't really say if it's great or not. But Casanova is legitimately great. I mean, I can say that like a lot of creator-owned work, it's got this full energy and unique voice that makes you excited to read it. It's a manic comic, and it's adult, almost immaturely adult, really. But it all works together because the titular character, Casanova, is kind of a bit childishly violent and sexual himself. Oh yeah, the plot. Okay. So Casanova is a shady, amoral, freelance secret agent in a world with advanced technology where the forces of Empire, led by his father, are at war with the Seychelles and Waste, who are led by a strange super nerd channeling Bill Gates and Steve Jobs simultaneously, and interdimensional terrorist Newman Zemo, respectively. When his sister, Quinn, dies, he's dragged into an alternate universe where he's the one that dead, and his sister is the shady, amoral, freelance, etc., etc., and recruits him to act as a double agent to replace his dead self inside of Empire for reasons known only to Zemo. TLDR, classic double agent story with parallel universes. So, Casanova's got double crosses, nail biters, hidden secrets, drugs, sex, some heavy comics references, and deliberately, some might say, perhaps even calculatingly, weird as it is, it manages to deliver a core of characters who seem like absurd caricatures at first glance. It's a solid book, and it ends with a change-up to the status quo, so I can't tell you what the rest of the series will look like. But Casanova Luxuria it's a great book that's a good start to a series that by all accounts is top-notch, and it will make you wish you had more of it. I know I do. Anyway, Casanova Gula and some of Volume 3 are already in stores, with more of Volume 3 coming later this year.
Other times, you don't care about continuity. You want to pick up a fucking comic book, enjoy the hell out of it, and put it back down. You don't need to back-reference anything or get sucked into an endless ongoing release at a snail's pace. You need a comic that's one and done. Folks, I have your one.
Supervillain team-up, MODOK's 11. If evoking Ocean's 11 wasn't a tip, MODOK's 11 is a heist featuring C-list supervillains who have no alternative but to help MODOK steal a dangerous power source. What it has that the Clooney and Friends Vegas Jamboree doesn't is more double crosses than a bad road in the Bible Belt. It's clever, it's fun, it's constructed with more solidity than a steel fucking pyramid, and anything that can happen to anyone at any fucking time. And it has MODOK. It has fucking MODOK. He's a mental organism designed only for killing, or calculations. I'll be honest, they're a little unclear on that. Anyway, he's amazing and ridiculous and completely fucking insane. Oh, and it's by Fred Van Lente, who's just awesome and just does great work. Fun stuff. You're gonna see him some more in a few weeks.
Now, here's a random comic.
Strangers in Paradise by Terry Moore pretends to be a slice-of-life comic. In actuality, it is one of the most grounded, realistic comics I have read in my entire life. That's not to say it's boring. In fact, it has an exaggerated reality that effectively underlies Moore's exhaustion with the fucking assholes that fill everyday life. Strangers in Paradise is about Francine and Kachu, two friends, their relationship, and their connections with others, romantic and otherwise. While the story centers around Francine's relationship with her awful boyfriend, that's just the driver for them to ram headfirst into each other and the outside world. It manages to ape a sitcom and be almost cartoonish while never losing its edge or letting us forget that Kachu and Francine are real people who have all of the weaknesses of folks like us. Folks who are working on our relationships with each other, with others, and, romantic and otherwise.
Sometimes you're tired of it. Marvel, DC, Marvel, DC. You want something different. But a lot of the different stuff out there is crap. So you're looking for something that feels good, something that's truly different. And then here I am, with something that feels good and is entirely different. Something like
Atomic Robo. Atomic Robo is written by Brian Clevenger, the guy who wrote 8-Bit Theater and Nuclear Age. That should be enough to make you want to buy it, but I'll keep talking anyway. It's about a robot made by Nikola Tesla who does research on the odd things that inhabit his Earth. And occasionally he picks up guns and he shoots the eviler sorts of those things, like Nazi robots and giant ants. He also goes on space missions. That's the thing. It's a story about science and adventure, but it's also about a robot dealing with his status as something both more and less human, as something timeless and perpetually young. It's all of those things, and I haven't mentioned yet because I assumed it was understood because of its pedigree. It's fucking hilarious. Again, if you want something to enjoy, something that's not like anything you've read, you probably want some Atomic Robo.
Now, here's a random comic.
Garth Ennis, The Punisher, Long Cold Dark. Garth Ennis does two things: chew bubblegum and write perfect Punisher stories. Punisher Long Cold Dark is about the return of one of Punisher's old enemies called Barracuda. Now, I'm sure Punisher has had a lot of opposites in his day, but if Barracuda isn't the ultimate bizarro Frank Castle, he's got to be in the Hall of Fame. He's a former enlisted from the Army with a rough upbringing, while Frank Castle was a Marine Corps officer whose defining trauma was as a parent. Both are methodical, intelligent, and unshakable. The difference is that Barracuda's a bit of a selfish asshole driven by his passions, while Frank is generally murdering people for the greater good, but bears no ill will towards those who oppose him. It's that treatment of others that sets Ennis as a Punisher apart from this week's sale fail, which I'll cover later. And what you have here is a basic cat and mouse game, which raises the stakes in a Punisher story in a way that I initially recoiled from, but which I quickly warmed up to. It's great to see Castle out of his element. I mean, granted, he's still murdering the shit out of dudes, but generally out of his element and off his game, and still able to do the Punisher-y stuff. It's a solid book with great character work. I don't even have to say it, but amazing action that just fucking gets you right in your balls if you have balls. If you don't have balls, it'll get you wherever your balls would be. I don't know where that is. I'm not a doctor or anything. Anyway, it is a Max comic, so just be aware of that. I'm just gonna go in the honor system. Don't order it here if you're below the age for Max comics, and I don't know what that age is, but don't do it. It's not worth it. Whatever. It's totally worth it. It's totally worth it.
Alright, so I have impeccable taste. I'm just a clever guy, and when I buy books, I buy good books. But some of the books I buy aren't good for me. And I realize that as a person who's selling these books, I'm supposed to say really great things about them. But some of these books are so terrible, so abortive, so repugnant to me on such a fundamental animal level that if I were to try to portray them in a positive light, my own conscience would douse me on gasoline and light me on fire. So these books are my sale fails.
This week's fail sale is Metabarons. It's based on Alexandro Jodorowsky's Dune script, but it still manages to feel like its own universe. The thing with Metabarons is that while it's prettier than a Catamite orgy choreographed by Damien Caro, it is oozing with the same kind of machismo that you would expect from something like The Punisher. Martial aptitude, stoicism in the face of exceptional pain, the willingness to sacrifice lives in the pursuit of a greater goal, a somewhat uninspired title, etc., etc. But what most Punisher comics have that Metabarons doesn't is respect for people who aren't made of this machismo. Doctors, housewives, and even police officers have a kind of strength that's different from that possessed by Frank Castle or the titular Metabaron. But they're no less worthy of respect. The Metabaron's framing device of childlike jittering robots explicitly telling us that all Metabaron characters, especially women, are inferior, while desperately reminding the reader that the story itself is really, really exciting, gets old really quickly. I mean, it kind of is an exciting story, but Metabarons tries far too hard. Its contrasts are garish, and only Anders fucking Breivik could relate to the protagonist. True story, I felt super awful one day and I had to throw up, so I read Metabarons and it worked.
Well, that's the end of it. But what if there was one more lot of comics at the end? You're in luck.
Alright, and finally we got Marvel Civil War What If, a collection of 7 what if stories based on Marvel Civil War event, World War Hulk, Planet Hulk, Annihilation, and an old Spider-Man Wolverine story. You don't need to be familiar with those to enjoy this book, but it does kind of help. You get to see how the Civil War could have ended differently, with either more, or, in a rarity for what if stories, fewer deaths. You can read an almost wordless tale of what happens if Banner is finally left alone. There's a story that reminds you, even in the character-destructing whirlwind of Civil War, of the essential heroism of both Tony Stark and Steve Rogers. That there was a point in comics where that needed to be done was pretty messed up, though. And what's probably the main reason most of you are reading... Oh yeah, and there's also a bad X-Men movie. It's awful. Okay, and finally, the reason that most people are probably interested in this is that there's a story about what happens when Spider-Man finally commits himself to being a total badass and becomes, well, let's be honest here, the best there is at what Wolverine does, and that is exactly what Spider-Man becomes. It's kind of your typical hero does things and he's totally badass bit, but I want to be honest with you guys here. Spider-Man does things and he's totally badass. It's a boss fucking story. Anyway, there you are. It's over. Go home.